Okay, here's a little video to show you and demonstrate the distributive property. You may have already watched the Math Antics video. I think it's a really good one to see in addition to this one as well. And this should be all the instruction you need to understand the distributive property and the converse of it in order to do your practice. Your practice is the IXL skill that I posted and also a question to answer on Google Classroom. And please remember to read each other's answers and comment back to them, letting people know if you think they're correct or if they made a mistake. And if you see a mistake, let them know what their mistake was. And then you can always go back and revise your answer. All right, so the distributive property tells us to multiply the number outside of the group before you add or subtract. So it's the opposite of what the order of operations tell us to do. We wouldn't be able to add -2 and f together because these are unlike terms. They do not have the same variable. So we have to multiply. And then when we multiply -5 times -2, we get a +10. And -5 times f is a -5f. Now, I think as time goes on, you'll be able to just do this in one step, but because we have this plus a negative here, we're going to need to then take that next step, clean this up, and instead of adding a negative, change it to subtraction, subtracting a positive. And this is the simplest form. All right, here we go. Sometimes the number is on the back side of the group. So you're going to multiply the 5 times the 2x. When you do 5 times 2x, you're going to get 10x. And then minus, because this is a difference, minus 5 groups of 9. So we have 5 groups of 2x minus 5 groups of 9. So that would be 10x minus 45. All right, next, again, distribute to each of those terms inside the parentheses, not just the first one, but both, -11x. And then I'm going to do this in one step. -11 times 2 is -22. Instead of putting plus -22, I'm just going to write minus 22. Okay, 4 times -3y. So 4 groups of -3y would be -12y. Remember, a positive times a negative is a negative. Again, we have a positive, and you could look at this as a positive times a positive with a difference. So minus 4 groups of 1 would be a -4. All right, next, this is the converse of the distributive property. We call it factoring. So factoring is when you divide out a common factor, and we try to find the greatest common factor when we do this. So the greatest common factor of these two terms here is 3. And when we divide those out, it's going to be in this form. So we're trying to get it from this form to this form. So it's going backwards, right? So if I were to change this answer back into the product of this sum, it would look like this. I'd divide this by -11 and this one by -11, and it would factor into this. So let's see. So if I divide by 3 here and I divide by 3 here, I'm going to pull that 3 out in front, and I'll have 3 groups of, these cancel, x minus 3. So the answer is 3 groups of x minus 3, and you can always distribute it back in and see if you go back to where you started. You may think this one looks difficult, but it's really not. So just think about what the greatest common factor is. It's not going to be the variable because those are different, but 8 and 6 have a common factor of 2. Okay, so think of list all your factors of 6, list all your factors of 8, and the common factor is 2. So I'm going to divide those out. You always want to try to find the greatest common factor. And this is going to look to be in this form. So 8y divided by 2, that would be 4 over 1, right? So this would be 4y. And 6 divided by 2 would be 3 over 1, so this would be 3x. And there's your answer. What do you think the greatest common factor of these two terms are? 5 and 15a. If you said 5, you are correct. So you're going to divide both by 5. Now be careful when we pull that 5 out, and we're going to make this a sum because of the plus sign. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so there's going to be a 1 here. 15 divided by 5 is 3, so that will be an A. So the answer is 5 groups of 1 plus 3A. And last, a little trickier because the greatest common factor has to do with the variables this time, not the numbers. So if I were to write this one out in expanded form, this here would look like x times x. And here this would be 20 times x. And we're subtracting these two. So the common factor here is x. So since each of these has one x, I'm going to divide by x and divide by x. So I'm going to pull that x out in front, subtraction sign here. These will cancel out. So I'll have a 20 here, and then these will cancel out, so I'll have x here. So the answer of x groups of 20 minus x, and you can always distribute it back in and see if you get what you started with. And you do. X times 20 is 20x. X times x is x squared. So there's your answer. That's all I have for you today. We are going to talk more about this topic in our live math class on Thursday. So please check your week 10 task list for the time of that class. And I'll see you all then. Good luck. Try to, I think you can all work towards mastery on this, which is at least a 90, but go for the 100. Because once you get to 90 on this IXL skill, it starts to include negative numbers, and that's very important for you to know for next year. So go for the 100. You got it.